Ever pull up to a river like this and think, where do I even start?
It's like going to Golden Corral for your first time. You walk in and there's roast beef and steak over here and asparagus and crap over here, but there's so much food to start with that it really feels kind of overwhelming.
We've all been there, and even experienced anglers get humbled by big rivers. They're massive, complicated, and honestly, a little bit scary.
Oh! Ah!
Big rivers, they're not confusing once you learn how to break them down. Where to start, what to do, and why it works.
Between the two of us, we've spent the better part of a couple decades wading, floating, and figuring this stuff out the hard way.
And somewhere along the line, we actually learned to love big rivers. In fact, our favorite river in the world, it's big.
Yeah, big enough to make even Trump go, wow, that's big, that's beautiful. In fact, I've never seen anything as big and beautiful as that river right there.
So in this crash course, we're gonna give you a clear plan to tackle rivers like this. How to read water and find fish, picking the right fly, the best rigs for bigger water, how to achieve good drifts, and give yourself the best chance at catching your fish of a lifetime.
Because once you know what to look for, big rivers stop feeling overwhelming and feel a lot more like opportunity. This is the Big River Crash Course.
This Big River Crash Course has 3 objectives. Number 1, the Big River mindset. Number 2, the 5 core skills. And number 3, putting it all together. We're gonna start with number 1, the Big River mindset, and then we're gonna send you on over to Spencer to learn about the 5 core skills. Something we hear over and over again from other anglers is this: I love small streams, but big rivers, I just don't know where to start. And honestly, I get it. You pull up to a river like this that's 100 yards wide, fast current, seams running in every direction or no seams at all, it can feel like a lot. You could spend the whole day casting and feel like you didn't even scratch the surface. But here's the key mindset shift. You don't fish the whole river, you fish sections of it. Confidence on big rivers doesn't come from trying to fish everything. It comes from breaking it down into manageable pieces. You're not trying to be like Spencer and eat a pizza in one bite. You're looking for little slices, spots that look fishy, where fish can live and feed comfortably. Now here's the good news. Fish don't change just because the river's bigger. They still follow the same rules. They want 3 things: food, comfort, and safety. Your job is to simply find the places where those 3 overlap. If you can find where those overlap, you can find fish anywhere. Big rivers, they just have more options. Once you start thinking that way, the intimidation fades fast. Before you even rig up, take a minute to observe. Most anglers, they rush to start casting. But observation is what separates the skilled anglers from the lucky ones. Watch how the current moves. Notice the foam lines, seams, color changes, and softer edges. That's where the story of the river will start to reveal itself. Observation leads to strategy, and strategy leads to fish. And here's the next big mindset shift. You don't need to fish every piece of water. On a big river, success comes from being efficient. Fishing smart, not just hard. Make a few quality drifts in each spot, adjust once or twice if you need to, and then move on. Don't get stuck trying to fish it all. Fish every spot with purpose and cover water until you connect. When you shift your mindset like this and stop trying to fish the entire river and focus on those parts that make sense, big water starts to feel possible. And that's when the fun starts, because now you're not guessing, you're fishing with purpose. All right, now that we got our mindset dialed in, we're gonna send you on over to Spencer, who's gonna cover the 5 core skills you'll need to fish big rivers.
These 5 skills will make the biggest difference when you're out there fishing big water. And once you understand them, you can apply them literally anywhere. And our first skill is how to read big water. Now, reading water just means that you're able to look at a river and identify places where fish are likely to hang out before you even make your first cast. You can start identifying those fishable sections by going back to what Alex mentioned. Fish want to hang out in a place where they feel safe, where they're comfortable, and they've got a lot of access to food. Now, let's identify a few pieces of water that match that criteria. Seams. This is where fast and slow water meet. These are conveyor belts of food. Fish will often sit just inside the slower water, slipping out into the seam to grab a drifting bug, then tucking it right back into that softer, walking speed water so they can rest. You'll find seams all over the river, along rocks, below islands, and anywhere the current changes direction, depth, or speed. Edges. This is the softer current near the bank where fish can feed easily without burning too much energy and still have quick access to cover or structure if they need it. Don't overlook these edges. Even on huge rivers, plenty of fish live within a rod's length of shore, especially early or late in the day. And last, transition points. Darker water often means deeper, cooler refuge. Fish use these depth changes to their advantage, dropping into the deeper water for cover, then sliding up into the shallower lanes to feed. These little clues tell you where the fish are likely hanging out, even if you can't see them. Now that we know where the fish live, we're ready to move on to skill number 2, which is my favorite. It's what the fish eat. Skill number 2 is all about fly selection. We got to match a fly in our box to food that fish actually want to eat. Big rivers hold all the major food sources that your small streams do. Your caddis, your midges, your mayflies, and your stoneflies. There's even some bonus food in the big rivers as well, with your scuds, your sow bugs, even your crawdads. With that literal cornucopia of flies and food to pick from, how do you know where to start? How do you know which flies in your box are actually going to work? Well, here's a little secret. You don't need to know the ins and outs of every bug hatch if you want to catch fish. You can easily narrow things down by using the VFC Right Fly Formula. So when you get to the river, take a minute to look for signs of life. Are there any bugs buzzing in the air? Did you kick any bugs up out of the grass as you walked to the river? Next thing you'll want to do is check to see if there are any bugs on the water, so any little critters floating right on the water's surface. You can also check to see what bugs are in the water as well. And a great way to do that is just by reaching in, grabbing a rock or two, and turning them over to see what bugs are crawling around. Then you want to match the bugs that you found in, on, or around the water to the bugs in your box by using the Right Fly Formula. You do this by matching size first, shape second, and color last. Size is the most important piece to consider here. If you get the size right, you can be a little off on some of the others and you're still gonna catch fish. If you follow the Right Fly Formula, you're gonna end up pretty stinking close to what the fish actually expect to see in the water, and that's like 95% of the battle right there. Now, let's talk about when to use each fly type, your dries, your nymphs, and your streamers. Dry flies aren't the most common on big water, but they're also the most exciting. You'll fish them when there's a hatch going on or when you see fish rising, which again doesn't happen every day, but when it does, it's hard to beat. On bigger rivers, look for risers along soft edges, foam lines, or slower seams where bugs collect on the surface. Nymphs are going to be your bread and butter. They make up about 80% of a trout's diet, and they work year-round. On big rivers, nymphing is the most consistent way to catch fish because most of the feeding happens below the surface. If you're ever unsure of what to tie on, a simple double nymph rig is rarely a bad choice. Streamers imitate baitfish, leeches, or crawdads, the bigger meals that are available in the river. They're your best bet when the light is low, the water is a little bit off color, or when the flows rise after a storm. Streamer fishing is a great way to cover water and target aggressive, bigger fish that are looking for a big bite. Picking the right fly is just one part of the battle here. The real magic is going to start happening when you understand how to rig those flies up and when to use each of those rigs. So let's jump right into skill number 3, rigs. Skill number 3 is rigging up for big rivers. On big water, the speed, the depth, and the structure are constantly changing, so your rig's got to change with it. I like to keep things simple by building off of the fly types that we just discussed. There are 4 main types of rigs that are going to cover you for just about every situation you run into. Let's take a look at them. Up first, the dry fly rig. Dry fly rigs are what you'll use during a hatch or when trout are visibly rising, which doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's magic. Fish these rigs along soft edges, seams, or back eddies where the bugs collect on the surface. These target the top of the water column and are perfect for matching the hatch and sight fishing. Next up is nymph rigs. These are your bread and butter. They work year-round and are especially effective when there's no surface activity. Fish them through the deep seams, runs, and depth transitions where fish are feeding near the bottom. They're your best bet for consistent action, and adjusting your weight or indicator depth can be the difference between a good day and a great one. Then there's the dry dropper rig. This setup shines in riffles, shelves, and transitional zones, places where fish might feed both on top and below. It covers mid-depth to the surface, giving you the versatility to fish mixed water effectively. Don't be afraid to lengthen or shorten the dropper length if you get to shallower or deeper spots. And finally, streamer rigs. These are for when the light is low, the water's rising, or it's a little off color. You'll fish them through seams near structure, along undercut banks, or in deeper transitions, targeting aggressive fish looking for a big meal. Vary your retrieve and cover water quickly. This is how you move big fish. Each setup has its moment, and it's really about picking the one that addresses the water and conditions in front of you, not necessarily the one that you'd rather be fishing. If you want to see exactly how we set up these rigs, then you need to check out our Rigs and Knots Pocket Guide. It'll walk you through each of these rigs step by step. You can snag a free copy by scanning the QR code here on the screen or visiting the link in the video description. So now you've got your rig all dialed, you might be thinking, oh, I'm ready to go out and grab that river by the tail and wrap it up and put it in my pocket and just conquer it. But it's not only about how you rig up those flies, it's also about how you present them. Having the right rig is one thing, but how you fish it, that's what really matters. This is skill number 4, presentation. To help keep things simple, we're going to think about this skill in 2 parts, before you cast and after you cast. Before you cast, you want to keep this in mind. Where you're standing in the river can matter just as much as the flies you've tied on. Your position controls your angle to the current, how those flies drift, and whether or not the fish see them naturally or they drift by and they go, hey, Steve, yeah, it's that idiot Durant trying to fool us again, but that fly looks like crap. I know it ain't real. And if you get too close to those fish anyways, they're gonna spook, zoom off, and tell all their buddies about how you can't even walk in the river correctly. If you're new to fishing big rivers, I'd recommend setting up downstream and slightly across from your intended target. Let me tell you why that matters. If you cast straight upstream, your flies land on target, but your line lands right on top of the fish, and that's an easy way to spook them. If you cast straight across, your line crosses multiple current speeds and the drag starts instantly. If you cast straight downstream, your fly will drift naturally towards the fish, but managing your line can be tricky, and when a fish does eat, the hook set usually just pulls the fly right out of its mouth. But if you find that happy medium, standing slightly downstream and across from your target, everything starts to click. Your flies drift naturally toward the fish before your line or leader ever gets there. It keeps your drift clean, makes line control way easier, and it keeps you out of a fish's line of sight so you don't spook them. Once you're in position and you've made your first cast, the focus shifts from where you're standing to how your flies are drifting. This is where presentation really matters, because even the most handsome, charming, dashing man, such as myself, is not gonna get the lady if you walk up to her looking like a hobo. So even if you've got the perfect fly, if it doesn't look natural, it's usually not gonna get eaten. With dry flies and nymphs, your goal is to get them to drift naturally with the current. You don't want any drag, no tension, just drifting exactly like a real bug. You can use small mends and subtle rod tip movements to keep your fly line from pulling on your flies. If you see your line speeding up or there's a little wake behind your fly or your strike indicator, that's drag, and the minute the fish see it, they are going away. They're not going to eat that. So if you can, you want to fish shorter, more focused drifts as much as possible. You'll get better control over your line, more contact with your flies, and more consistent hookups with fish. If you can fish 10 short but clean drifts, that's going to outfish one sloppy long drift every single time. Good positioning creates good drifts, and good drifts, they don't just make your mom happy, they catch fish too. And when all of this comes together, a fish is going to eat your fly, which brings us to skill number 5, fighting fish in big rivers. Hooking into a fish at a big river is just the start, because now you've got heavy current and fast water to deal with, and that fish feels twice as heavy as it normally would. When a fish eats your fly, you want to give a firm lift and set that hook with confidence. This ain't the Bassmaster Classic, so you don't need to set it so hard that your body's turning every which way direction. No, you just need to set it with enough authority and force that you drive the hook point home without snapping your line. The key thing to remember, and if you don't learn anything else from this video, I hope it's just this one point, and that is that fighting fish, especially in big rivers, is all about balancing tension. If you've got too much tension on the line, you'll end up snapping your leader. If you don't have enough tension on the line, the hook's going to slide out and the fish is going to swim away laughing at you. It helps to remember that you're not fighting the fish so much as you are guiding the fish to your net. In these big rivers, you're fighting both the fish and the current, so you want to find ways to use the river to your advantage. One of the most common questions we get about fighting fish in big rivers is, should I strip the line in or should I put the fish on the reel immediately? On big rivers, I usually put the fish on the reel as soon as I can, unless it's a small one. I go to the reel because between the current and the weight of the fish, there's usually enough there to justify using the reel to get the fish to the net. Putting fish on the reel also gives me a smoother, cleaner fight and just a bit more control over where that fish goes. Fighting fish in big rivers and fighting fish in general is something you're going to learn a lot from with your failures, and it's kind of an art more so than it is anything else. But even though we might not all be Van Goghs, or who's that dude who painted the weird stuff, Picasso, that we might not be them, but you could still be a bit of an artist with these 2 pro tips. The first tip is to use side pressure. Don't keep your rod tip straight up in the air. The strongest part of the fly rod is the butt section. So when you use side pressure, you're engaging that beefy, heavy section of the rod that's got a lot of pulling and lifting power. This will help you move the fish out of the strong currents and into your net. Now your second pro tip, and this might require you to bust out your running back cleats or maybe your ballerina shoes or whatever, but you've got to find a way to stay downstream of the fish. One of the easiest ways to lose fish in big rivers is if you let them get downstream of you in that heavy, fast current. Once this happens, you're fighting the current and the fish together, and the odds just aren't in your favor in that case. If you can, move your feet, get to the banks, and put yourself downstream of the fish. Pulling upstream to try and get the fish through all that fast water and back to your net is often going to either break your line or pop the hook right out. It might not always be possible to get downstream of the fish, especially if you're a pure waist in water fishing a really deep run, but do your best to make sure you keep them above you in the river. So remember, stay calm, use side pressure, and keep that even tension on the fish. Also, and I'm not very good at this, so I'm speaking from experience, be patient. Landing fish in big rivers can take a while sometimes. And folks, give yourself a round of applause because that wraps up our 5 core skills of fishing big rivers. Now, I'm going to send you back over to Alex and he's going to get you ready to put this all together out on the water.
So that's it, the 5 core skills you need to fish big rivers. When you stack those 5 skills and develop the right mindset, it becomes a repeatable system that you can use on any big river. It's not about luck, it's about learning how to break big water down into smaller, manageable pieces. But now, it's time to put it all together out on the water. We're headed out to one of our favorite big rivers to show you exactly how we fish it. How we read the water, how we rig up, what flies to use, and how to catch fish using everything we just talked about. Check it out right here.